we have created a new high-performance Mac for our professional users. It's designed and engineered to enable a wide range of uses and virtually unlimited possibilities for customization.
So this is my new Mac Pro. Now, of course, we've all seen this before, both with this computer and pretty much every other computer and device that Apple makes. The interior and exterior are both beautifully designed. Now, the 2019 Mac Pro is significantly larger than the 2013 good old trash can, and with that extra size comes a vast amount of expandability, pretty much allowing you to upgrade and change out whatever part you want. Might I say, it also comes with the greatest cable I have ever felt or used. Now, this computer does weigh a significant amount. I believe it's around 45 pounds. And taking a look at my new desk setup here, I used to go for like minimalist look. Now I go for whatever works for my workflow. So I need a bunch of different screens to have my scopes on, and I may do a whole desk tour on this, if you guys really want it. No. But tilt back up. We don't need to see the mess of cables underneath. Now, beyond just a beautiful piece of machinery and really cool blacked out logic boards and graphics cards, why is the Mac Pro a better value than any other Mac out there for pros? Here's my opinion. Now, to be 100% honest with you, I didn't think I was going to have a new computer this week. As any followers of the channel know, I've had the 2013 good old trash can for the past 7 years since it pretty much debuted and came out. But all last week, I was trying to get projects done and I was trying to render and export them out, but it was just going at such a slow pace. At the worst point, I essentially had 3 or 4 videos and projects lined up, and I was completely bottlenecked because I couldn't get one video to export. It was time a business decision needed to be made, and so I consulted with my better half, and she gave me the go-ahead to upgrade to a $6,000 computer. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why I went the baseline and why I went with it over, say, a maxed out 16-inch MacBook Pro or iMac Pro. Because honestly, there's not too many Mac Pro videos on YouTube, and the ones that do exist are all from Marquez and iJustine. And so for anyone like me who's looking to just get started with the base model, it's kind of hard to watch those videos and get a realistic performance idea of what you're going to get for video editing, graphic, 3D animation, anything like that, because you're seeing completely specced out hardware on the 6K Pro XDR displays and all that glorious stuff. All right, so let's get into it. Why did I buy this computer? This is the 3.5 gigahertz, 8 core, 32 gigs of RAM, the lowest stock graphics card with another 8 gigs of GDDR5 memory. So it all comes down to how you buy a computer. Now, I used to work at Apple in the retail stores, and we were literally trained how to ask the proper questions and to basically get people to buy the right computer for them. And this is where there's no right or wrong answer. My mentality for buying a computer may be completely different than yours, and that's totally fine. I was able to realize that I've had my base Mac Pro for 7 years, or almost 7 years. Now, when it first came out, everyone was excited about the upgradability of it, and while you could do some things, like if you really wanted to do the processor, it wasn't very easy, especially compared to something like this, which mimics a more traditional custom PC build, just Apple's version of it. So all I did in that one, literally last year or 2 years ago, was up it to 64 gigs of RAM. But in my head, I'm like, okay, I got almost 7 years out of something that I couldn't even upgrade. But I did buy the Mac Pro at the time, it was workstation grade GPUs, CPUs. And so in comparison to, let's say, look at like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, even fully spec'd out, it's mobile processors, it's mobile GPU. And in terms of video editing, if you're in Final Cut, then none of this really matters because we all know that you can do like 8K footage on a MacBook Air. But I use DaVinci Resolve primarily primarily, and anyone who uses DaVinci or Premiere or any other non-Apple professional software knows that it's completely all about your resources and how much power you can throw at it. And with the laptop, because that hardware is not going to last me as long as more desktop grade stuff, then really I'd probably want to be replacing it every 3, maybe 4 years. And then let's look at the iMac Pro. Now this one I think is kind of a toss-up. I totally understand this because this has that desktop grade specs. It has Xeon processors, it has the better graphics cards. Now here, if you do the RAM bump up and the GPU bump up, again, because you can't change the stuff after the fact, so I definitely would have bumped everything up except storage, you get a much better deal of storage. That's the thing, that's like the one thing I still can't get over. I think it's utter bullshit that this is 256 gigs, like not even 512. Everything else, literally, the base MacBook Pros, 16-inch iMac Pros, those are all 1 terabyte. That's my one gripe, that there's no excuse for that. But anyway, you get a better deal on the storage on the iMac Pro. I think that one ended up being around $56.99 for the one I customized, basically upping the RAM and upping the GPU all the way. So that's still a couple $100 less than the base Mac Pro. And you get a 5K amazing display built in. And so that's where I can absolutely understand with someone going for a maxed out iMac Pro over the Mac Pro because they just want to get that all in one system. Again, we look back to the 2013 Mac Pro, and you can find this in any PC components or any previous generation Mac Pro as well. When that first came out, the highest end model, I believe, was the 12-core processor, and that was like a $4,000 spec bump if you bought it at the time. Similarly, how in this Mac Pro to go to the 28-core is like $7,000. That same $4,000 whatever dollar 12-core CPU, you can now buy on eBay for under $200. And so that's why I love computers like this. Because yes, right now, those Radeon Duo, whatever beautiful cards that I wish I could afford, the fact of the matter is, in 3 or 4 years, there's going to be new types of cards. And so that means the newer base model cards become so much cheaper. And so as of right now, this meets my needs. I can fully edit 6K video. Also, you got to realize that even though this one has half the RAM as my previous Mac Pro, that one had 1866 megahertz RAM, and this one's like 2900. So the speed of the RAM's a lot faster, but it's also just 7 years newer technology. So it's automatically going to have whatever nerdy stuff that even is way over my head just to make it that much more efficient, that much more powerful. For me, it made way more sense to get the shell of the thing that I want and that's going to last a long time, with everything being upgradable. The fact that you can put third-party parts in here, other GPUs, RAID systems, all that good stuff. For me, this was the perfect system. So now that we talked about why I went with the Mac Pro instead of, say, an iMac Pro or a MacBook Pro, I want to dive a little bit into the performance and what you should expect out of the base model. Now, I'm not Linus Tech Tips, so I don't run a bunch of different benchmarks, and you're not about to see a bunch of infographics and comparisons and bars. So if you want something truly scientific, I'm sorry. If enough of you guys comment, I'll be happy to gather that stuff, but in general, that's not really how I like to do things. But what I do want to talk about is what the actual real world usage is like. Now, obviously, I've only had this for about a week, so bear that in mind. So I'm not trying to say this is a long-term review or anything, but with how many videos I edit on a daily basis, pieces of content, Photoshop, and how many programs and just overall usage I get out of this computer, I at least feel comfortable with giving you a first impression of how each program is performing in this computer. Now, in addition to just software, of course, what's going to be taxing on any computer is going to be how many displays you have hooked up. Now I have 3 currently. Now I just added this smaller third one last week. I'm actually going to have a full dedicated video on it. It's a really cool portable monitor, but it's fit into the workflow nicely. My main monitor is still the LG 31MU97B, which is arguably one of the greatest budget colorist monitors to ever be made. Unfortunately, they're incredibly discontinued and becoming very hard to find even used, but if you do find one, you can find it for around $350, $400, and it is one of the greatest monitors, and I will say it's the greatest monitor at that price point. But anyway, this is a true Cine 4K display. This is 4096 by 2160, so it's a 17 by 9. So this is going to be the hardest monitor that the computer is pushing for. My second one, which is in vertical mode, is going to be the Asus PB27Q. This is a 1440 display. When I don't have any programs open, the computer handles all 3 of these monitors just fine, and doing some basic tasks, switching windows between the screens, having a bunch of different smaller less stressful programs open is of course not a problem. Now if you're a big Photoshop person, you're still not going to have any issues. Here I'm opening a bunch of TIFF files all at once, and again, at least coming from a 2013 Mac Pro, this is significantly faster, and I'm not noticing any major hiccups. Could it be faster? I'm sure, but there were no noticeable moments even when I'm doing content aware fills or really kind of heavy process intensive stuff that I notice any major hiccups for more than a couple seconds. Now going into Final Cut, as you kind of could expect, here I have a handful of ProRes HQ 6K files, and the computer handles it just fine. This is to be expected as we've seen 8K footage on much more lower end Macs. The optimization between Final Cut software and of course Apple hardware is just too good. So if you're a Final Cut user, there's no complaints here. You can add color grades, noise reduction, all that stuff. You're going to be just fine. Again, could it be better? Of course, as time goes on, you add more better hardware to this machine. I'm sure it'll only get faster. You'll only be able to get better streams. And if I was shooting with ProRes all the time, I think the Afterburner card would be the best addition, but I never shoot ProRes besides just this test footage for this video. So that would be kind of a waste of money because that again is only for ProRes and ProRes RAW. But the main reason that I got this machine was for DaVinci Resolve. Now anyone who does follow me on Twitter saw that I posted a video late last week showing the fact that this thing can play back 6K clips just fine, and I was absolutely stunned because I've never actually been able to watch full 6K B-raw clips on the computer without any sort of stutter. So of course it handles the raw footage just fine, dropping it into a timeline, handles all that wonderfully. Even adding 1 or 2 layers of a basic utility LUT and a basic color correction, you have no problems. Where you'll start to run into some hiccups where the base model struggles a little bit is going to be when you start adding especially noise reduction. That immediately starts to not kill it, but it definitely where you would want to set up some sort of caching or mess with your playback quality or create some sort of optimized media. This isn't a huge surprise as noise reduction is pretty much the most taxing thing that a video editing software can throw at computer hardware. My favorite part of pro video editing software is that you can actually choose what hardware you want the software to pull resources from. So of course right now I only have one dedicated GPU, and so this is both handling what's Resolve as well as the 3 monitors. I reached out to all you much smarter people on Twitter asking for advice and what they would recommend, whether it's third-party GPUs or stick to Apple's. And there was some debate there, but the best suggestion came from this user right here, who allowed me to kind of have a duh moment, add a secondary GPU that is, significantly more powerful than this. And then inside of DaVinci's preferences, you just choose it to use that card. That way the current 8 gig GPU that I have can handle all of the compute stuff and displays and everything outside of Resolve. And then whatever that dedicated other card is with 16 or even more gigs of video RAM can be solely focused on giving an amazing experience inside of Resolve. So to wrap up the performance section, If you are like me and you're working in 4K, 6K timelines, you're doing a lot of your own content creation, narrative films, commercials, I really think in the next couple of years, all I'm going to need is one extra GPU, which is going to cost under $1,000 or just at that ballpark, and then maybe go up to 64 gigs of RAM. But honestly, I've been checking my RAM usage, and even DaVinci Resolve under full load was only taking about 15 to 20. Now I'm sure if I put in more, it may try to grab more, but it wasn't even close to maxing out, so I don't even think that's worth spending the money on right now anyway. So I hope this helps anyone out there who has been contemplating the base model compared to upgrading it right off the bat. Let me know down in the comments below if this helped make you a decision. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.